New data from overseas shows imports into the U.S. are down since the tariff war started, while exports to other countries are quickly climbing.
This means major powers such as China and India are finding other markets for their products. Madeline Rivera has more from Washington.
As the tariff wars escalate, America's trading partners could be adapting more quickly than anticipated.
Suddenly everything's gluten-free, right? Gluten-free products are among the hottest sellers right now, so no wonder farmers in Kansas are panicking. Their biggest crop, it's a gluten-free cereal grain called sorghum, is now under threat. The state is the top U.S. producer of the ancient grain, and in the last 3 years exported $416 million worth of sorghum to China. In fact, the U.S. sends 80% of the cash crop to China, where it's used to make liquor and feed livestock as well.
Several U.S. ships bound for China came back after Beijing.
The global agricultural landscape has been shaken by an unexpected shift that few believed possible and even fewer saw coming. A single decision has sent shockwaves through trade circles, markets, and strategic power corridors, rewriting long-standing assumptions about who controls the future of global food supply. South Africa, long perceived as a stable but secondary agricultural exporter, has suddenly taken center stage by securing a $25 billion sorghum deal with China, an agreement large enough to disrupt the balance of power between nations and redefine global demand dynamics almost instantly. What makes this moment explosive is not just the size of the deal, but the speed at which it dismantled a relationship the United States believed was guaranteed. Overnight, America lost its biggest sorghum market, a critical export route that many assumed China would rely on for decades. Instead, the world's largest consumer pivoted sharply toward Africa, signaling a new era in agricultural alliances and exposing vulnerabilities that Washington has long ignored. The abrupt shift has created an atmosphere of disbelief across the industry. Sorghum, once considered a quiet but dependable export crop for the United States, has become the center of a much larger geopolitical recalibration. China's massive order from South Africa is not only a purchase, it is a strategic declaration that Africa is no longer a backup supplier but an emerging powerhouse capable of reshaping global agricultural flows. This transformation did not happen slowly. It unfolded with the kind of decisiveness that forces governments and markets to reconsider everything they thought they understood about trade priorities. One moment, American exporters were confident in their role as China's primary supplier. The next, the market was gone claimed in full by a competitor that has been rapidly strengthening its agricultural infrastructure, technology, and export capacity. The deal's magnitude immediately raised questions about why China made such a dramatic move. The answer lies in a combination of economics, strategy, and shifting global influence. South Africa has spent years investing in its agricultural modernization, from expanding high-yield sorghum production to improving logistics and export efficiency. Labor costs remain competitive, land availability is expanding, and climate adaptability gives the region a comparative advantage in drought-resistant crops like sorghum. Pair these factors with China's long-term strategy of diversifying away from American supply chains, and the result is a deal large enough to rewrite market expectations. China has sent a clear message. It wants agricultural security that is not dependent on U.S. policy, pricing, or geopolitical tensions. The United States, meanwhile, is left confronting a painful reality. Losing its biggest sorghum market overnight is not simply an economic setback. It is a symbolic blow to its agricultural dominance. For decades, American farmers assumed that their scale, technology, and historical trade ties guaranteed a secure position in global markets. The $25 billion shift to South Africa shows that this assumption no longer holds. Competitors are rising, alliances are shifting, and the global order is reshaping itself in ways that challenge the idea that the U.S. is the world's default supplier of essential commodities. International buyers are increasingly prioritizing price stability, long-term trust, and diversification over legacy relationships, leaving U.S. producers vulnerable to sudden market realignments like this one. This development also raises concerns for broader U.S. agricultural exports. If China can move sorghum purchases to Africa this quickly, what prevents similar shifts in maize, soybeans, wheat, or other staple crops? The answer is unsettling: nothing. Global buyers are no longer tied to American supply in the way they once were. Infrastructure investments across Africa, South America, and Southeast Asia are giving emerging economies the ability to compete at scales that threaten U.S. dominance. South Africa's breakthrough sorghum deal is simply the latest and most visible example of this trend. It serves as a warning that agricultural power is moving southwards and eastwards, away from the traditional centers of influence. China's decision also aligns with its broader goal of strengthening economic partnerships across Africa. By choosing South Africa for such a massive purchase, China enhances its role as a long-term development partner while securing access to reliable agricultural supply. This dual benefit makes the deal more than just a trade agreement. It becomes part of a larger geopolitical strategy that unifies infrastructure investments, trade networks, and agricultural flows into a single coordinated effort. For South Africa, the deal is transformative. It boosts revenue, strengthens its global reputation as a dependable supplier, and accelerates its agricultural growth trajectory. It proves that African nations are no longer passive participants in global trade. They are active contenders capable of securing deals that alter global markets. While the global agricultural community analyzes the implications, one thing is clear: the United States faces a new competitive landscape. The comfortable dominance it once enjoyed is being challenged by nations that are investing strategically, producing efficiently, and negotiating assertively. The $25 billion sorghum deal is a wake-up call showing how quickly market power can shift when competitors are prepared and determined. It also highlights the cost of complacency in industries that depend on long-term international partnerships. Markets do not remain loyal. They remain efficient, and when a more efficient, cost-effective, and strategically aligned alternative emerges, buyers move. This moment marks a turning point. It signals the rise of South Africa as a major agricultural exporter and demonstrates China's readiness to diversify away from U.S. dependence. The world is watching closely because this is more than a sorghum deal. It is a symbol of a broader realignment. It exposes the fragility of long-term assumptions and highlights the speed at which global power can shift when economic opportunity aligns with geopolitical strategy. As the dust settles, the implications extend far beyond agriculture. They reach into trade policy, international relations, and the very question of who will shape the future of global food supply. The aftermath of South Africa's landmark Sorghum Agreement has ignited a wave of global recalculations, exposing fractures in the international agricultural system and revealing the extent to which power has shifted beyond the grasp of nations that once shaped market direction with ease. As the world absorbs the consequences of this sudden realignment, Act 2 unfolds with rising tension, economic introspection, and geopolitical repositioning. This is the moment when the initial shock transitions into a deeper understanding of what this shift truly means for global dominance, food security, and the competition for agricultural influence. The United States now finds itself in a position uncomfortably unfamiliar, responding rather than leading. The loss of its largest sorghum buyer is not just a logistical disruption but a glaring indicator that the world's confidence in American agricultural supremacy is fading. Exporters who once operated with predictable demand must now confront the reality that the international marketplace has become far more fluid, strategic, and unforgiving than expected. The sudden disappearance of a multi-billion-dollar customer forces a reassessment of production planning, pricing systems, and long-term investment strategies in regions that have relied heavily on China's consistent purchases. The reverberations move beyond farms and into financial markets, where investors begin questioning whether other American commodities could face the same fate. Meanwhile, South Africa's agricultural sector enters a new era of acceleration. The $25 billion deal acts as a catalyst, energizing investment, infrastructure scaling, and technological integration. Export terminals expand, processing facilities ramp up capacity, and farmers convert more land into sorghum production to fulfill the unprecedented demand surge. The country's success sends a clear message throughout the continent. Africa is not merely a supplier of raw resources but a strategic agricultural competitor capable of meeting international standards at scale. The visibility of the deal inspires neighboring nations to explore similar opportunities, pushing the continent into a more assertive role in global food markets. The transition also forces China to clarify its long-term agricultural strategy. By shifting away from U.S. dependency, China strengthens its position as a nation determined to diversify every critical supply chain. The decision reflects not only commercial considerations but a deeper motivation to insulate its markets from geopolitical unpredictability. The trade tensions, tariff threats, and diplomatic fluctuations of recent years have made China acutely aware that reliance on American crops exposes it to political risk. Turning to South Africa signals a commitment to building supply routes that cannot be easily weaponized. This strategic repositioning gives China both economic stability and geopolitical leverage, reshaping its relationships with agricultural exporters around the world. International markets begin responding to this shift in ways that reveal just how interconnected and fragile the global agricultural system truly is. Commodity prices fluctuate as traders attempt to anticipate long-term demand changes, shipping companies redirect vessels, adjusting to new export routes. Insurance costs shift as risk assessments are recalibrated for ports and trade corridors previously considered secondary. The scene is one of rapid transformation, with every segment of the global supply chain forced to adapt to a decision that occurred too quickly for traditional systems to prepare for: the American agricultural lobby. Long accustomed to influencing trade outcomes, discovers that it no longer holds the same sway. The loss of China's sorghum demand exposes an uncomfortable truth. Influence must be earned anew in a world where emerging markets are competing aggressively. The belief that buyers would remain loyal out of habit or history has been shattered. This humbling realization raises critical questions about the U.S. approach to global agriculture. Investments that once focused primarily on domestic capacity may need to shift toward international relationship building, trade diversification, and competitive realignment. South Africa's sudden rise forces long overdue discussions not only in the United States but across Europe, South America, and Asia. Governments begin studying how a single African nation could secure such a massive agricultural agreement, recognizing that South Africa may have revealed a formula others can follow. Competitive production costs, favorable climate conditions, and policy consistency become key factors drawing buyer interest. The global agricultural hierarchy, once dominated by a few predictable players, is being disrupted by new contenders capable of reshaping trade flows without warning. Act 2 also highlights how technological shifts are accelerating this transformation. Advances in climate-resistant seeds, precision farming, and data-driven crop management have given South Africa the tools to scale production efficiently. These innovations weaken the long-standing assumption that only wealthy nations have the technological edge to dominate global agriculture. The reality is changing, and technology is becoming more accessible, allowing emerging economies to challenge historical power structures with increasing confidence. As this new competitive landscape forms, the United States faces difficult decisions. One path involves doubling down on traditional markets, hoping to regain China's interest in the future. Another path focuses on diversifying export relationships with regions such as Southeast Asia, the Middle East, and West Africa. A more ambitious path would require structural reform, rebuilding trade diplomacy, modernizing agricultural policy, and recognizing that global leadership must be earned, not assumed. Whichever direction the U.S. chooses, the urgency of adaptation is clear, because the world is no longer waiting for America to catch up. South Africa's gain does not occur in isolation. It is part of a larger pattern indicating that global agricultural power is fragmenting. Instead of a single dominant supplier, the world is moving toward a multipolar agricultural economy. Emerging nations are building capabilities, strengthening partnerships, and capitalizing on geopolitical opportunities. China's decision to secure sorghum from South Africa is one move in a much broader strategy of diversifying risk and cultivating new alliances that cannot be easily disrupted by political tension. Act 2 ultimately exposes the deeper truth behind the headline. This is not just about sorghum or farming or trade. It is about global power shifting in real time. It is about rising economies claiming space once reserved for traditional giants. It is about the world's recognition that agricultural security is one of the most valuable forms of leverage in the modern era. And most of all, it is a signal that the nations prepared to act boldly, invest strategically, and adapt quickly will shape the next generation of global trade. In the end, this massive shift in global agriculture isn't just a headline, it's a warning. Power is moving, markets are changing, and nations that adapt will rise while those that hesitate will fall behind. South Africa's 25 billion sorghum breakthrough is only the beginning of a much larger realignment that will reshape global influence for years to come. As these developments unfold, one thing is certain: the world you thought you understood is transforming faster than ever. This is why staying informed matters now more than at any point in recent history. And here at GeoIsReport, we break down these global shifts with clarity, depth, and accuracy so you never get left behind. If you want more insights, more investigations, and more high-impact geopolitical breakdowns, make sure you stay with us. Keep watching, stay wise, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an update from GeoIsReport. The world is changing and we're here to help you understand it.